Hi, this is Jeremy with Immersia. Today I'm going to do a short video to show you how I use MeshBaker to take models and make them more performant on mobile platforms. Okay, so I'm in the Unity editor, and I have a 3D model that I created in Paint 3D, which I've imported, of a chemical injector. I have before I started this, I already went to the asset store and I imported MeshBaker free. So MeshBaker by Deane. There's several MeshBaker assets in the asset store. This is my favorite. The free version has some limitations on it that the commercial version doesn't. One of the big ones is that on the free version, you can only use mobile shaders when you combine materials into a texture atlas. And I think on the commercial version, it's less restricted in that regard. But I've already got this imported, so just showing which asset I use. Okay, so I have my chemical injector object. So looking at the stats on this scene, you can see the problem. This single object is creating 54 batches. So that's a problem. If I duplicate it, of course, I'm going to double that number. And again, so we would already be, with 3 instances of this object, we're already pushing way past what's really acceptable for, mobile VR platforms like the Oculus Go or Quest. So what I'm going to do is use MeshBaker to combine all my materials into a texture atlas and to combine my meshes into a single mesh. So if I look at the way this object is broken down right now, this is what came in when I imported the FBX into Unity. I have this kind of odd node structure hierarchy where I have some empty nodes that contain no transform data, and then nodes that just contain transform data, and then nodes that actually have my mesh renderer and my material on it. So the first thing I want to do is refactor this, because I'm going to have to bring all my nodes with mesh renderers and materials, shaders on them, into MeshBaker. So under my chemical injector object, I'm going to create an empty object called, just call it refactor. I'm going to unpack my prefab completely. I'm just going to pull these in. I'm being a bit lazy here. I could expand these nodes and do multiple select on these guys. I'm just feeling like using the mouse today for everything. So I kind of picked a rather simple object. So hopefully this isn't too tedious. But for more complex things, I will admit it can get tedious, but the payoff is huge and well worth it. And the reason I'm doing this is because bringing hierarchical node structure into MeshBaker's array, I have only had issues with that. I don't think that it's designed to walk the tree structure and get to what it needs. I think you really have to flatten things out for this to work properly. So, and if someone has managed to make that work, just leave a comment on this video and explain how you did it. And there might be a step here to save, but I don't know how. So, okay, so I'm going to do a quick check just to make sure I didn't miss any. I'm going to start at the bottom here and work my way up. Just looking for any nodes that might skipped. Okay, that looks good. And the refactor, so I've got some here, others I need to shell out. Just flatten everything out. There we go. So I'm going to walk down this list to see if I might have. Yeah, see, this is what I'm looking for, something that slipped in that's empty. Does not need to be there. There's another. And another. Okay, good deal. I'm going to go ahead and delete this set. Take my refactored nodes and drag them up to chemical injector, get rid of the refactor object. Okay, everything is flattened out. The thing I want to do is make sure that every node here is using the mobile bump diffuse shader. Again, if you're using the commercial version of MeshBaker, this isn't an issue, but for the free version, and honestly, if you're targeting like a mobile VR all-in-one platforms, you're probably going to want to use the mobile shader anyway. Do a quick check. It's like everything is mobile shader. That's good. Now I'm going to go to game object. Again, I have MeshBaker already imported here. So I'm going to go to game object, create other, MeshBaker, TextureBaker and MeshMaker. Okay, so now I have a TextureBaker object with a MeshBaker child node. So we're going to bake our textures, our materials into a texture atlas first. This is something that's really important to the way the Snapdragon mobile processor renders. It's having all of our textures baked into a single texture atlas is going to really give us a performance boost. If you're interested in why, there's some great documentation. I think Oculus has some stuff on their site that really shows, gets into kind of some of the technical details of why that is. If not, I'm sure Qualcomm does on the Snapdragon. In the Snapdragon documentation, I haven't really dug into that too much, but I can certainly see the difference at runtime. So we're going to bring all of our nodes into TextureBaker. Okay, so there's an option here to open a tool for adding objects, which gives you a pop-up dialog where you can add multiple. I'm just going to drag them in one at a time really quick. Okay, just going to do a quick scan to make sure I didn't bring anything in twice, because that would give us, we'd have to basically start over again if that's the case. So looks good to me. Going to create a new material for combined assets. So I'm going to call this Chem Injector Baked Materials. Okay. Then I'm going to click on this button that says Bake Materials into a Combined Mesh. It's baking. Generating my texture atlas. And it's done. Okay, now generate MeshBakers. Bake all child MeshBakers. Okay, now you see what's happened in our scene. We've got a new combined mesh object. If I go and look at the child node of this is a new object with a mesh renderer and a shader that represents the combined mesh of my chemical injector model. So now I can take this and I can turn off this model, and I want you, watch what happens with batches when I do this. Sometimes, there we go. So it went from 57 to 6. So you can see the huge performance savings that we get from this. And now I could go ahead and delete my original model from the scene. I can also take my combined mesh here and just rename it whatever I want. Go ahead and do some cleanup, get rid of the shell of that, and get rid of my TextureBaker since I don't need it anymore. It's done its job. So now I have a new combined mesh, combined mesh model, and I can take this and duplicate it all I want. You can see with 3 models, I'm only up to 14 batches. So much more performant than what I was dealing with before. This is an amazing asset for optimization for any kind of mobile, especially for mobile all-in-one VR development, which is my focus. I hope this was helpful, and take care. Bye-bye.